Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Taranto. Thanks for joining us this morning. Today, we wanted to talk about a really, touchy topic, very scary for a lot of people, but mold remediation. Mold inside houses. It happens. We find it sometimes just walking through the property. Sometimes we find it during a home inspection. But either way, mold can come up in a home purchase or a home sale. So, Tom, why don't you kick us off and talk a little bit about the most common place we find it?
Yeah, the most common place we find mold is in the attic. And as Joanne said, it can be scary when you hear the word mold. But what's interesting about modern construction, particularly up in New England, is that each level is an individual kind of living area and breathing area. So although you may find mold in your attic, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to impact your house where your breathing area is. And that's really important for people to be mindful of if you encounter mold. So we oftentimes will find it in the attic. And the way you identify it is that you will see the attic plywood should typically be a nice clean brown. If you see black all over the wood, that's an indication that you have mold. Now, ultimately, we won't know until you test it, but a lot of mold mitigators say if there's black on your sheathing, it's mold. Save the step of testing, save the money from testing, and go right to treating. So, Joanne, what are some causes? What are some reasons that mold would grow in an attic?
So, the number one reason why you might find mold in an attic is because you have poor ventilation and poor air circulation. So, just remember that heat rises. So, your attic in the summer is going to be extremely hot. And if you don't have proper ventilation in place and air circulation, that can create an environment where moisture gets trapped and you end up with mold growth.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that can be caused by your bathroom fan. So the exhaust fan in your bathroom then pulls all of that steamy hot air out of the bathroom while you're taking a shower, but maybe it's not connected to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we've seen it where those exhaust vents just vent right up into the attic.
Yep.
So if you think about when you have poor air circulation, you're then introducing hot, warm, wet air into the attic, you are generally going to create some type of mold issue. But it's not something that is unfixable,
Right.
right? That's the most important thing, is that when there's mold growth, whether it be on the sheathing, the rafters, the flooring, um, either way, it is treatable.
Yeah.
So, Tom, what's the next approach? If you see some of this, you know, black substance, we'll call it, because we
Yeah.
can't call it mold unless we test for it.
Right.
But generally, if you see it, it's there,
And
right?
it just happened to me the other day. I was in a walkthrough with a client. We saw this. We brought two mold mitigators out. They both said, yes, it's mold. And what they identified was that when a house is built, there's insulation put in the attic. But then what happens is over the years, people want to insulate their house more. They want to bring it to a really energy efficient. And sometimes that insulation gets pushed over the eaves and blocks up the airflow. And so what they said they had to go in there, pull back all the insulation, make sure the air was coming in from the eaves, going up to the gable and the ridge vent. And then they said they're going to take a solution they have. Don't know the exact makeup of it. I know there's hydrogen peroxide, I know there's zinc in it. And they'll go in and they'll spray all the mold, and that kills it.
Yes.
Some people will then use a HEPA vacuum to vacuum it all up, whatever falls off, replace insulation if they have to. And then what they do is they go in and typically they'll spray it with a white encapsulator that will encapsulate all of the wood boards and all the sheathing. And oftentimes what we see is mold mitigators will offer a rebate, I'm not a rebate, a warranty. And that
Mm-hmm.
warranty will be anywhere between 5 and 10 years. To
Mm-hmm.
in the component to that warranty being enforced is that you have good ventilation in your attic and that nothing has changed in the envelope. And that way, then people can go back to just relaxing and enjoying their home. Um,
Yeah. I
go
think
ahead, Joanne.
I think that the process of having mold mitigation done can be a bit daunting and scary, but at the end of the day, it is another process that is, very highly specific And generally speaking, you don't need mold mitigation if you have less than 10 square feet that are impacted.
Right.
Okay. So if you're less than 10 square feet that's impacted, you can probably do some at-home or DIY solutions, potentially, depending on what the issue is.
Right.
But what I love about bringing in a professional mold mitigator is that they treat not only the affected area, but they treat any contiguous areas that could be affected. So Tom talked about each level of your home being a different air envelope. So your attic is a different air envelope than your basement.
Right.
So when you treat the attic, generally speaking, they treat the entire attic, and then they will guarantee the entire attic. But the best part is that in order to get the mitigation and the guarantee, you have to rectify the reason why the mold happened in the first place.
Right.
And even with newer homes, I think this is important to understand. Newer homes that have the foam insulation in the walls and in the ceiling and the roof line and so forth, those homes are very, very tight. They don't allow an exchange of outside air and inside air for good reason, right? For weatherization. However, you want to keep conscious of that, because if you have one of those homes and you have a bathroom fan that's venting up into that attic, there is literally nowhere for that air to escape.
Right.
So you don't want to be introducing moisture into any enclosed environment.
Right.
So lots of things to think about, but mold mitigation is not as scary as it sounds. We've seen it done in basements. We've seen it done in attics. We've seen it done in bathrooms. And it's really a process that's pretty regulated, and there's a process to it. And then it's great to have that guarantee afterwards, and you can pass it on to the next owner if you sell the house.
No, this is great. This is a great topic. We just love to educate our clients about all topics that regard to real estate. So thank you for watching another edition of Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Taranto. Cheers.